Welcome to the Nate KG Podcast, a show dedicated to exploring the nuances of jump rope, where I talk with jumpers of all skill levels, backgrounds, and fitness goals. On this episode, I talk with Kaylee and Nick Woodard at KayleeFaith320 and at NickWoodard87 on Instagram. You can also find them on learningtheropes.com. Kaylee and Nick are both world champions many times over. Here's just a few of their accomplishments. Kaylee has been jumping for over 22 years, and in that time has earned many national and international titles, has performed for Cirque du Soleil, Cirque Dreams, and Saltare, has a degree in kinesthesiology, a master's in exercise science, and a PhD in motor behavior and sport psychology. Nick has been jumping for over 26 years. He's earned 4 Double Dutch Contest World titles, 5 National Championship titles, and 14 World Championship titles. He's traveled to 30 U.S. states and has been to 16 countries across 5 continents for jump rope. I could probably fill an entire podcast episode simply with the accolades of these two jumpers, but instead I asked them about these accolades, discussing things such as the history of jump rope, the best methods for growth of our sport, the importance of biomechanics and training like an athlete, how these two met and ultimately got married, and a whole lot more. You do not want to miss this one. All of the show notes for this episode can be found over at natekg.com. And now please enjoy this interview with Kaylee and Nick Woodard. Nick and Kaylee, welcome to the show. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great. How are you?
I'm very good. I am very pumped to have you guys on. I think that the entire community is going to be extraordinarily excited to hear from both of you. So this is going to be quite an interesting conversation. I think before we begin, it's really important to point out something that I think with a lot of people in the community who view jump ropers, after a certain threshold of skills, it can be kind of difficult to assess, the level of the eliteness of skill when it comes to jump rope. And I wanted to take a moment just to explain that, while there are many jumpers that are very good at the sport, you two really do sit at the top, at not only in your skill level, but also in your influence in the community and just the respect that all jumpers have for you guys. And I really want to make that a point when as we're starting, that you guys really are at the top of the top. So I know you guys have both done so much work for jump rope, so I want to thank you before we get started.
Thank you for saying that. That's really nice.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I think now that we kind of have that as a good context, let's kind of go way back to the beginning and hear about how you both first picked up a jump rope.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess I'll go first. So it started for me when I was in 2nd grade, and I literally remember sitting in my classroom and looking out and seeing all my friends leaving school for this jump rope for heart performance. And I was like, okay, they're leaving school and I need to be a part of this because I want to leave too. So that kind of started.
That's such a good motivation. I want to leave school.
Yeah, it seemed logical to me in my little 2nd grade brain. But
yeah.
That started it. We had a team at our school. It was coached by Sunny Seal, who's kind of a legend. Not a lot of younger people know who she is now, but she's amazing. And anyway, so that's who I started jumping underneath. And soon after that, my mom took over the team. And shortly after I joined, I learned that you could compete in this thing called jump rope. And I was that kid that I wanted to compete in something. It didn't matter what it was. I just wanted to compete. And so jump rope became that thing for me. And then, started learning you could go to Disney World and compete and just all these different things. You could travel the world and do shows. Like all of those things just really piqued my interest and got me hooked. And now it's 22 years later, and I haven't looked back, and just so blessed to be a part of this incredible sport.
Yeah, that is so awesome.
Yeah. And then for me, I started when I was in 1st grade, and my PE coach had a jump rope team at the school, and they were doing a performance to promote a workshop that weekend. Mm-hmm. So when school went to the show, loved everything I saw, had a lot of friends in there, and they said I should definitely come to the workshop. So I went to the workshop, learned tons of skills, had a blast actually, and then they encouraged me to join the team. Well, at the time, I think they were only taking maybe 2nd or 3rd graders on the team. But if you want to be on the morning club that met, once or twice a month, you could do that. So I joined the club and kind of built up more skills there for a couple months. And then shortly after, my coach, which was named David Bond, he's awesome. He invited me up to the team to the afternoon practice, and then I haven't looked back since. So for me, I think it's been 26 years, about to start 27, and I love everything about it, and it's amazing.
Yeah, and David Vaughn is also a legend. Like, literally, he's so incredible.
I'm pretty sure right now he can still do a TJ.
Yeah, so. Probably so.
That is impressive. Okay, so I have the amount of questions that I have following up just from that question alone is insane. But let's go through the history of jump rope, because 26 years of jumping is a very, very long time being in the sport. Let's kind of stick on this idea of some of the original jumpers that influenced you two. Let's kind of talk about this group of people that you grew up with in the sport. Because we've mentioned two already. Are there other people that had a big influence on you when you were first beginning to jump rope?
Yes, so many. Man, if I think back to like people on my team, I know the Pangs have influenced me a lot. They basically, it was 3 siblings, so Andrea, Adam, and Andrew. And I jumped with them, but also learned so much from them because they were older than me. And they just influenced my competitive drive, and they influenced how much I love the sport. So I owe a lot to them. And then looking at jumpers kind of outside, I always looked up to Kelsey Moe. She still coaches. She coaches the Summer Wind Skippers, and she was just such a powerhouse. She was so strong, and her form was so beautiful. So I looked up to her a lot. I looked up to Laura Eisenhart, who now, what is her last name now? Laura Pierce. Yes. Yeah, she got married, but looked up to her. And then another one that I would point out is Sean Hamilton. People know who he is. He's the leader of IJRU now and so influential. But back then, as a jumper, he influenced me. Just, again, his skills were so impressive, but he was just such a presence when he was on the floor. Like, everybody stopped to watch Sean Hamilton jump. And so he inspired me to learn. He inspired me to just be a better person and jumper.
Yeah, and I think for me, as far as on my team, I would say a lot of my teammates I actually jumped with a lot. So Jeff Moss was he's my best friend, but also the person I jumped with for most of my career. Then you got Lindsay, you have Katrina, you have all these jumpers that I had the privilege of jumping with for certain routines. Like, they definitely pushed me to be just better than what I was and just create great routines with them. I would also say outside of my team, I think for me, the biggest one was Sean. I do remember, looking up or hearing the names of Derek Herai, DeMarcus and Derek Epps. I never got a chance to jump with them per se, but DeMarcus and Derek is I really, over the years as I've gotten older, really got a chance to know them. And Sean outside of jump rope has been just an inspiration for me. He's my best friend also outside of jump rope. We can get together, hang out, and it's nothing about jump rope. It's all about just hanging out.
That's so cool.
Helping me become a better man, all that kind of stuff.
He's such a mentor, just naturally.
Yeah, so, outside of his skill set on the floor, he just helped me and so many other jumpers just be a better individual.
Yeah.
I feel like that's so special about jump rope is that it feels, for a sport, granted it is smaller, but it feels so concentrated with really good vibes and really good intentions with everyone around. Obviously that's not everyone, but I think by and large, most jumpers have such a great attitude, not only with the sport, but with each other as well.
Yeah. I think that's a huge point. I think that growing up in the sport, at least when Nick and I were growing up, we were constantly just taught that as staff members at these various workshops and as elite older jumpers, when we would go to competition, it was kind of drilled into our heads that you are a role model, whether you want to be or not. Mm-hmm. People are looking up to you. And so that was really helpful, at least for me growing up, just understanding little eyes are watching you, mm-hmm. regardless if you want it or not. You gotta be responsible with that.
Yeah, that is so true. So I have a question about, I guess, the origins of jump rope within the U.S., because I know there's David Walker and there's Richard Sandali as two of the people who really, from what I understand, really kickstarted jump rope in the U.S., and I'm assuming it branched out from there. But I know that there are some gaps in my knowledge for sure. Do you guys know more about kind of the history of jump rope within the U.S., but also within the U.S., the rest of the world, if that's applicable.
Sure. So, I mean, that's actually what my thesis was on. I did my thesis for my master's program on the history of jump rope.
Oh, sick. I didn't even know that. That's so cool.
Yeah, no, it's cool. And
wait,
so
can you detail like the context of that first before you get into it? Because that is so sick.
Yeah. So I did, for my master's project, I did a thesis, and I did it on the history of jump rope. And the cool thing was, whenever I went to my professor, I had jump rope on my brain. And I was like,
as always.
Yeah, I was like, I kind of want to.
I feel like that's such a thing for competitors. Like, you can never separate jump rope from like anything you do ever.
Yeah, and I went to him. I was like, I kind of want to like do a survey and try to get things in rec centers, and like that was my idea at first. And then he kind of paused, and I was like, oh no, he doesn't like jump rope. He doesn't want me to do it. So I was like, or I can talk about football and do whatever. But here's the cool thing. He was like, Nick, you have something special with jump rope, and I think you should write it. And I said, really? He was like, you've been doing this for so long. And I learned that he was the Parks and Recs director at a place out in like Michigan.
Get out of here.
He actually did recreation double dash competitions, which they would send over to the Apollo. So he actually knew about jump rope a little bit. So he was like, Nick, there's so much history there, and you have so much history with the sport. I think you should write on the history of jump rope. And I was like, for my project, that's what you want me to do? He was like, yes. I was like, done.
You're like, sweet. You sat down at a computer, you busted it out in like 24 hours, and you're like, sweet, that was really fun.
Exactly. So, no, I mean, it was awesome to do that project. So I did that. I passed my thesis. And so, yes, I do have some
a lot of knowledge. Yeah,
I do have some knowledge here that can help. So you're right. Richard Sindali helped get that going in the late 60s.
With single rope.
With single rope. And then David Walker with double dutch in the early 70s in New York. And there were a couple different organizations out there. So there was IRSO. There was also WRSF, World Rope Skipping Federation. There was ADDL, and then there was NEDL. So there was 4 organizations going on out there. IRSO and WRSF, although they sounded like international names, they were basically a U.S. entity that just had some international friends come over
to compete.
So it was still more of a national event, if that makes sense. But they just kind of had some some international friends come over.
Gotcha.
And then you can probably see this, I think, on one of the websites, probably USA Jump Rope, but WRSF and IRSO, they ended up combining into what you see now as USA Jump Rope back in 1995. So when they came together, I think they had 6 seats on the board for IRSO, 6 seats on the board for WRSF, and that's kind of how they formed that. With ADL and NDL, I honestly didn't get a lot of information there, unfortunately, this time. But I did learn that, their competitions that was the first ever competition that started in the U.S. So ADL is the oldest standing organization. I think they started back in 1973. I'll have to double check my source on that, but 1973. And so they're the longest standing organization that was doing competitions to date right now. And I'm trying to think what other questions do you have that might help me a little bit more.
Yeah. So the organizations, that is so phenomenal to hear. I've spoken with people about the history because I'm asked about that a bit on Instagram, but I also know that for the information that I have found, I know that there's a lot missing, not only in terms of the players, like you've already filled in a bunch of gaps with the actual organizations, but I'm also curious kind of how jump rope was then spread, because I know that Richard Sindali went, I believe his initial or main focus was going through the physical education teaching system in the U.S., and David Walker had the competitions that he was running, as you said. But I guess what happened between the very beginning of Richard Sindali and David Walker, because it seems like they are the starting point to modern competitive jump rope, and what happened between then and I guess 2000 or whatever benchmark you think makes sense that brought jump rope from this very, very tiny fledgling thing that was very, like, there were just bits and pieces here and there, to some sort of a formal competition structure that had, a decent amount of members and athletes participating. And I'm not sure if 2000 or 2001 is a good benchmark for that, but if you think a different year works better, we can kind of take that slice of time and discuss how jump rope really grew.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think from what you said, as far as Richard Sandali, you were correct. He went through the physical education system. He actually held a big workshop. I believe it was in Texas. And I think he had at least one, if not two, instructors from every state, I believe. PE teachers come in and they started to learn. I feel like my coach, or Miss Pickett was one of those people that came and learned there. And so it kind of really started spreading there. I know that IRSO, I don't have an exact date, but they had one of their first international competitions, or one of their first competitions, I think in the maybe late 70s, early 80s, which kind of sparked, single rope and double dutch being in a competition event together. So I know that happened as well. And then I think it just, over the years, more teams started to grow, more teams started to form. And I think by the 90s, so 95, I think 96, 97 was like the first nationals, if I'm not mistaken. It might have been a little bit before that. But I think that was probably when jump rope was probably growing the most, because we finally had a huge national competition. We had lots of people engaged with it. And then I would say probably by the late 90s, early 2000s, we were probably, in my opinion, like at our biggest point. We probably had close to 1,200 people competing in these competitions. And when I say at these competitions, I'm meaning at nationals. So I think that was the biggest point there. And then I think, where we are now as far as growing, we just have to continue to get more rec programs going, because I think that's where our sport's going to continue to grow. I think we have tons of teams out there in order to keep national competitions and world competitions going. But in order to kind of keep that trend going, we have to get the lower levels going. So that's a little small tangent off of the history, but I feel like that's how we're going to continue to get there.
One other thing, and Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Richard Sandali also kind of host or organize these trips overseas?
Yes.
To spread it?
Yes. I'm glad you said that. So Mr. C, as well as doing things here in the U.S., he would travel overseas to Europe, to Asia, just all these places, and they would partner with it was like the Department of Defense, and they would go to like these military bases, and they would spread jump rope there. They would do classes. He would bring like DeMarcus, Derricus, Chris Holmes, some of those in that generation. He would bring them all together, and they would go and do these shows, the Jump Rope for Heart shows, and kind of spread jump rope over there. And so while he was over there, he helped start, if I'm not mistaken, ERSO. So that's a European rope skipping organization. He helped start a lot of these international organizations. And then when, another bit of information, when USA Jump Rope was starting, at the same time, FESAC was also beginning as well. So he kind of helped navigate these international and national organizations as they were beginning.
Wow, that is a tremendous amount of work started and sparked by Mr. Sandali. That's a lot of organizations and a lot of traveling. Oh my gosh. So you mentioned how we should spread the sport now is through rec programs. I know personally I've been very in tune with enthusiast jumpers, or whatever term you want to use for people who are exploring all styles of jump rope, but are not necessarily focused on competition. Can you, I guess, elaborate more on what you think we need to grow and how you define recreational jump ropers?
Yeah, so I think defining recreational jump ropers is kind of what you just said. People that are jumping. They're interested in jumping for either fitness reasons, fun reasons, etc., but they're not necessarily focused on competition, or they're not focused on high level competition. So yeah, I would kind of divide that group into jump rope enthusiasts, which I would say are people that we're seeing on Instagram, which is so awesome, right? Like seeing people on social media who are picking up jump rope for fitness, and they're closer to adult age. And then younger kids. And that's where we're kind of trying to target with our business, with Learning the Ropes. We're trying to get jump rope into recreation centers and elementary schools, where these kids can be introduced to what jump rope is, not only as just, an activity that you're barely introduced to in PE. You might learn a couple skills and then you're done. But no, we don't want them to just stop there. What else can you do? Can we teach them what our sport is? Can we teach them to, quote, play our game, right? And use what they've learned in order to compete if they want, or make up little routines if they want, and just take it to the next level so that we can have that grassroots level of our sport start. So I think that's kind of how we would define recreational jump rope right now.
For sure.
Mm-hmm. This has been a really big topic on my mind lately, because I think ever since the quarantine or lockdown started, we've seen, over the years, we've naturally seen a lot of jump rope increasing outside of the competitive world, for sure. But I think even within this small section of time, whatever it's been now, 8 months, maybe 5 years, it's hard to tell. We've seen so many new jumpers. I think a lot of adults come into it, and we're seeing we're getting a lot closer to the mainstream adoption of jump rope. And it's been so interesting for me to watch. And I've had a lot of questions about, how to foster it and how to keep going. And so you guys are saying you're really dialing into, spreading through youth and through these different areas, which is phenomenal. What have been, one or two of, some obstacles that you guys have faced? Because I'm really not in that part of jump. I'm not in that world, but I'm really curious to hear what work is being done and what obstacles you guys are working on getting through.
Yeah. So I think going off that point, I think one obstacle is creating more instructors. So I think what we believe is one reason why our sport really hasn't grown as far as growth is because we feel as jump rope athletes that we have to do it all. So my point with that is whenever, you have a school that reaches out and says that, can you do a jump rope class? You say yes, and then you go do it. Another one calls, can you come teach? You say yes, and you go do it. A third one calls, you're like, oh man, well, sure, it's going to stretch me, but I can do it. Then a fourth, then a fifth, all these people start to call, and you're like, look, I can't do this anymore. Then at that point, a lot of times it stops because we feel that we're the only ones that can go teach a skier, a bell, a cross, and that's not the case. So for us, in order to kind of fix that problem, it's not great, but what we've done is when we were over in Knoxville, Tennessee, that's where we started our business, Learning the Ropes. And we had that same problem. We had 2 sites, we had 3 sites, then it went to 9 to 10 sites. And we're like, there's no way between the 2 of us, school and work, that we can get to 10 sites a week. It's just not going to work. So we ended up hiring University of Tennessee students. And so they were like in Kaylee's classes that she was teaching. And we hired them and said, do you want to be a jump rope instructor? We're going to teach you how to teach level 1 skills. We're going to teach you how to work with kids, how to navigate everything. And then from there, we pushed them out there, and they were able to teach the exact same skills that we would be doing to all these kids. And so I think as a sport, if we can just continue to create more instructors of our sport, of our activity, it'll help get more kids going. I think a second part is that we actually have to have a plan on how we're going to go in there. A lot of times our plan is like, we're going to teach jump rope and that's it, right? And so after they learn how to do it, they have to know where to go. What's the end mark? Is it a show? Is it a competition? What is that? And a lot of times we haven't had that. So our first 2 years, we actually built up to a showcase. So our instructors will go in, they will work with the centers, and at the end of our season, each of our rec centers will put together a 5 to 7 minute performance on whatever they want to do. Didn't matter if it was, dancing and jumping, whatever they wanted to do that jump rope base, we wanted them to just show off what they learned. So we did that for 2 years, and that's kind of what they were leading up to because they knew it. And then our third year that we were there, we ended up doing like a mini competition where they competed at their rec centers. And then once they got their numbers, they gave it to me. I cross-referenced them across all the centers, and then we gave out some small awards. So I think, one, we need to have more instructors so that we can spread our sport. But two, we have to have a plan when we go in, because if not, we're not doing anything. Going back to what Kaylee said earlier, and she said, we have to teach people our game. Here's what and here's another way how I like to put it. When you go into elementary school and you learn how to dribble a ball, then you learn how to pass it, then it goes into a hoop, then it's 2-on-2, it's 3-on-3. Now you're playing basketball. They taught you that.
There's a progression. Yeah.
It's a progression. You keep going with it.
And there's an end goal to it.
There's an end goal. With jump rope, we get you the rope. We teach you how to do single bounce, skiers, bells. We teach you those skills, or the PE teachers do a great job of teaching those skills. But then after that, you're like, well, that's it.
Right.
We don't teach them our game. We don't teach them how to compete. We don't teach them a compulsory routine. We don't teach them any of those things of how they can take it further. Once we do that, then jump rope, in my opinion, in our opinion, we feel like can be something that will be long lasting. They can go from elementary school to middle school and be like, oh, there's a jump rope team here. I now know how this works. Oh, I can go to high school. I now know how this works. Instead of finding a random team in your area and being like, what's that?
Yeah.
We just have to do a better job.
And a lot of times too, when they find that random team, and I mean, this is my story too. I found a team. I started jumping. Within a year and a half, my family was paying for me to go to Disney World on our own dime to compete. Like, that's a lot. And we were practicing like 10, 11 months out of the year. And I was, 10? So, it's just a huge commitment for an activity that parents might not have ever heard of as a competitive sport. The kid really doesn't know what it is, right? And so you're kind of just throwing the dice and being like, all right, well, I hope this sticks with 2 out of these 30 kids that I've got trying out for my team this year. Does that make sense?
No,
so if we can
it totally does. Yeah.
Yeah. If we can introduce it at that lower level and get people involved in the sport aspect without having to travel across the country at age 11 for their first year, like, that's where I think we're going to really start making it stick.
This is so awesome to hear. This is like exactly the conversation I've been hoping to have. This is really amazing to hear from both of you on this. Because I've seen this a lot. Like, I talk with Mike Fry a bunch, and Melinda Everett is my coach, and I see them both doing very similar, if not the same style of trying to get into the community the same way you guys have just described. And I kind of want to go back and forth a little bit here on this subject, because like, as I'm watching this from the outside, like, this is not something that I usually do, and at least not anymore, in terms of going into the community and supporting jump rope that way. I'm seeing this same thing kind of replicated in multiple places. And I really like your emphasis on planning and understanding that in order to scale, you have to bring others in, and being very clear about like these skills that we're doing. Like, they're not the craziest skills. Like, most people can pick it up and teach them. Melinda has her instructors. Mike has his instructor. You guys have your instructors. What are your guys' thoughts on, because as I'm looking at this, it's like, okay, here we now are building up a system, a replicatable input output thing that's happening. Do you guys feel like this is something that could be, I guess, in terms of planning, you could get all the details down and basically create a cookie cutter thing so that anyone in any location could jump in and do this in their community? Do you think that that's possible?
Yes. So I can say one of our goals is to try to have a Learning the Ropes location anywhere and everywhere. Mm-hmm. So it can be in LA, it can be in Massachusetts, like, it doesn't really matter where. Our goal is to have it anywhere and everywhere, have a system in place to where, as an instructor, you know exactly what you're teaching for each week, how it runs.
And you go through like our little training so that we know the quality is at least good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then like what we would really love to do, and like, this is just another way of us giving back. We want the years of jump rope that people put into our sport to actually mean something. And so, like whenever you go play football or soccer for so many years, you want to try to, either be a coach whenever you get done, or you want to try to give back to that sport. And I think a lot of our jumpers, they want to do that as well. But we also want it to be like a way that they can actually make some money as well, like, be financially secure. So I would love for one day for us to be able to field resumes for somebody who gets done with college. And they're like, look, we're looking at it and says, hey, I've been jumping for 15 years. I've won national championships. I've taught here. I've done this, whatever. And we're like, you know what? This is great. I want you to go to Dallas. In Dallas, we have 30 locations. That's 10 schools, 10 recreation centers, 10 YMCAs. I got 15 instructors there. I want you to be our rep. You're going to be our rep. I want you to go out and do that for us. But here's our growth strategy over the 5 years. I'm going to put you there and you go grow it, but this is your area. We want to be able to provide that for jumpers in the future with Learn the Ropes programs just about everywhere.
It's similar to like if you were working like a sales job. It's similar, but not exactly the same because you're not trying to get sales, but like in terms of giving someone a territory to then go build up. That's kind of, that makes a lot of sense. Is this kind of focus on youth recreation, is this like the main focus of Learning the Ropes, as you guys are really dialing into this youth recreation, or is there more in addition to that?
I would say there's more.
Yeah, there's more. So, I mean, I would say that youth in general is probably, if you had to put a primary focus on it, it would be youth in general. But in addition to like the recreation programs that we've been talking about, we're now starting to dive into developing PE curriculum in a loose sense, right? Mm-hmm. So we're filming these pre-recorded sessions where the PE teacher can actually have us virtually lead their class for a day or 2 or 3. So that's one thing that we're really diving into. What else, babe? Also
fitness.
Yes, also fitness. We've been doing online fitness. Honestly, Corona kind of started that trend. We were already thinking about it. And then when COVID hit, we were like, all right, this is the time. So we have an online fitness program for really anybody right now. It's primarily adults. And what's cool is that it's primarily people that haven't really jumped in the past, or it's been a while since they've jumped. So it's all, body weight and equipment that you can find around your house and lots of fun jumping, but it's just been really cool to see that. So that's kind of another area that we're diving into. And then of course we also do, performances and things like that. And it's been cool to be able to go into schools, and we've learned a lot about performing just as the two of us, because
that sounds like a difficult thing to do.
Yeah, it was kind of daunting at first. And I think Nick actually did 1 or 2 by himself at first when I couldn't even be there. And I prayed for him really hard during this 30 minutes. I was like, oh gosh. But yeah, so we've learned a lot, and we definitely do a lot of jumping during our performances, but we also have learned how to really involve the audience and really just talk to the kids. And it's been cool to be able to talk to them about life principles and how can we, use what we do with jump rope and then transition it over to talking about leadership, talking about being kind to others, just things that teachers want kids to hear. And so, yeah, that's just another branch of our business.
Mm-hmm.
The solo performing is not an easy task. I know my my third grade elementary school teacher occasionally will ask me to come back to the school over the years and be like, oh, can you come, talk to my class, show some skills or something. And showing up it's always so fun, but you're breaking down all of the skills and demoing them and then showing them 15 seconds of multiples, and you're out of breath, but you got to keep talking, and you get them a rope and you're just like, oh man, this is a lot to do at one time. No, I feel you on that. How have the virtual classes been going for PE? I'm really curious about that, because that is I would imagine an extraordinarily difficult task to accomplish.
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, I've done 1, maybe 2 when Corona first hit, just from
live classes,
just live classes, and it was cool. I mean, we had the kids on there for a second. I think it was a 20-minute session. We did a quick warm up. We actually did a lot of jumping, but it was all footwork stuff without a rope, because at the time they did not have a rope with them. Mm-hmm. So it was just more doing that, almost like a Tabata style like workout, but like doing skiers and bells and things like that, and like a little light stretch. So it introduced it to us, I guess, back in like April or May when it first happened. And then now we're really trying to like offer it more to PE teachers and trying to get a better grasp on it. So we're hearing that a lot of schools, and not school districts, are sending their kids home with like a bag of equipment that they can actually do stuff, a soccer ball, maybe a basketball, and now jump ropes, right? Mm-hmm. So that we're seeing that this is a trend, we're trying to reach out to some of these school districts, some of these schools, and say, hey, we have this service. So we're still kind of navigating our way through it, to be honest with you, but we're actually doing a virtual PE session, not with a PE class in particular, but we're actually working with a CrossFit gym. Mm-hmm. And bringing some of their kids in, and we're going to be working with them starting on Thursday and doing 2 sessions a week. So that should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and so it's kind of a hodgepodge, or not a hodgepodge, but it's just a mixture of different things. So we have some kids that they are in school, but it's virtual, and so they need a PE credit, right, that they can kind of do on their own. And so this can provide that PE credit. And then, of course, you've got your teachers who are just looking for videos they can send out. So that's our pre-recorded option that we have. And then also, reaching out to the homeschool type of populations and just really anyone who needs PE or activities for their kids right now, because everybody's schedules are crazy.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that is so awesome to hear that you guys are doing that, because I've seen you guys obviously post a lot and speak about this, but I'm glad that we're getting the time to really dig into this, because it's super sick. Let's take a little bit of a hard left, because I really want to know your history with all other sports that you guys have engaged with, and then how that kind of leads into your fitness and fitness education, because I know you guys both have a lot of education and experience with sport outside of jump rope.
So honestly, I told you that I started jumping really young, and before that and a little bit after I started. So again, I started in like 2nd, 3rd grade. I tried pretty much every sport in the book, like just tried it, put my toe in. And none of them really stuck. Like I always joke, I mean, I can do anything that you want with a jump rope. I can maneuver my body pretty well. Like I can tumble, but if you put a ball in my hand and ask me to throw and catch, you're
not happening.
Yeah, it's not happening. You're going to be really surprised. So none of those really stuck. I just didn't enjoy them as much as I thought I might. The one thing I did enjoy was cheering. And so I did that a little bit longer than the other sports, but once it came time, like there's kind of like that time period when you have to decide, I guess. And now, I mean, I could get off on a tangent on that. I don't love the early specialization that happens in sport, but anyway, that time did happen for me where my cheer coach was like, look, if you're going to do this, you really can't jump rope on the weekends. Like you're not going to be able to travel. You're not going to be able to do this, that, and the other. And at that point I had to make a decision, and I was like, well, I am going to jump rope, because I can live without cheerleading, but I would be really upset if I had to live without jump rope. So that was kind of the line in the sand for me there. And so from, I don't know, I would say like 8th, 9th grade on, I was just committed to jump rope. I did tumbling lessons and things like that, but really never competed from that point on in any other sports.
Yeah. And then I would say for me, I played quite a few sports. So leading up into jump rope, I did gymnastics, and I stopped when I was like 6 or so. And then that's kind of what led me to go into jump rope. And then once I got into middle school and high school, I played football, basketball, and I ran track. And so I did all those along with doing jump rope. I think at the time when I was playing all those other sports, I didn't necessarily practice with my entire team. Me and my double dutch team, or me and my pairs partner, we would get together outside of practice, and we would actually go. So that's kind of how I kept jumping and kept my skills going there. And I would say that, I tell everybody this, jump rope made me a better athlete, like hands down. Footwork, strength, power, all that stuff. Like, can you get it in the weight room? Of course you can. But I think I owe a lot of what I'm able to do on the field, on the court and stuff like that to jump rope and what it's giving me.
Let's stick on this for just a second, because Nick, you're one of like the most powerful jump ropers that exists. I mean, like the skills you do are insane. Do you feel that power is because of jump rope, or I would imagine your gymnastics training has played a huge role in that as well, because that is a very power dominant sport.
You are correct. So I think my gymnastics background definitely had a hand in it for sure, because when I was younger, I was learning the handstands, the back handsprings, the back flips. So I had a very good understanding of what my body should be doing and where it is in space. And so, I was the guinea pig whenever I got onto the team. They're like, what's the frog? Do a handstand, pull the rope under you. First time didn't get it. The second time they're like, oh, yep, that's it. So it was like I was that kid because I feel like I understood my body. I just need to know the mechanics of how to now put a rope with it. And so I think gymnastics played a huge role into it. And then I think as I got older, I got introduced to lifting weights. And that was like mind blowing, because like up until like ninth grade, I had never touched let me go back. Up until about eighth grade, I had never touched a weight in my life. I had just been jumping, like that was it. And then, I grew like 30 pounds in high school as far as.
Holy cow.
Let me take it back. I was about 120. I ended high school about 155-ish. So about 25. Yeah, so I grew. I grew a lot lifting, and then as I've gotten older, became a personal trainer, stuff like that. Started training other people. I now know what benefits lifting can give you when it comes to jump rope. I never would have thought that a long time ago. I would have just jumped, and that's it.
But then I got on. I was like, you gotta take care of your body,
Wait. Okay, hold on a second. We have a couple things to go over here. I'm like writing notes as you're talking, and it's like, oh, now I have 10 more questions for you guys.
Sure.
Real quick, I want to also hear, Kaylee, how have you been? I mean, because when it comes to female jumpers, a lot of female jumpers, their strong suit typically is not high level multiples, quads, and strength skills, but you pull them off so flawlessly. Like the way you do those skills is absolutely mind-blowing, whether or not you're female or male. Like the way you do them is incredible. How have you I guess trained for that?
Let me think. Well, thank you for saying that. I think that the tumbling lessons that I took as a kid definitely helped, but then also kind of like Nick was saying, being introduced to lifting weights and to actually working out and treating your body like an athlete has helped me so much. I know that as I was growing up, it frustrated me a little bit growing up in jump rope, because I think that a lot of teams, my own included, like we didn't necessarily condition and train like athletes would in other sports, right?
Yes.
And so I was just so hung up on that as a young athlete. And so I sought it out and bugged my mom to death until, we found a great trainer, and then just started getting into the weight room and learning. And I don't want to make it sound like lifting weights, like if you don't do that, you cannot be a good jumper. That is absolutely not the case. However, I know for me, it really helped because it helped me to build up muscle in the right places, and it helped me to learn where my body was and what it was doing and just really how to manipulate it. And so I think just making sure that you are treating yourself like a well-rounded athlete, making sure that you are strong, that you are powerful. And if that doesn't come naturally, like there are things you can do about that. You have to make sure that you're educating yourself and getting either with a good trainer or, like I said, just doing the research and educating yourself on what to do in the weight room in order to overcompensate, I guess, for those weaknesses.
And then you told Nick, and you're like, dude, you got to get on this because this is like a big deal. Is that how that went?
Man, I was like, imagine if you would have been training really, really hard, like an athlete and lifting, doing all the appropriate things for jump rope since you were 12, just imagine where you would be now. And so I get off on these tangents, and he's like, look, babe, I'm fine. Like, I can do it. It's fine.
Yeah. It's funny because like even now, don't get me wrong, I know the benefits of it. Like I'll go lift, but like I am not the person that's going to be in the weight room 3, 4, 5 days a week trying to get my lift in it's not me. It's never been me.
He calls himself a social lifter.
Yeah, like I'm a social lifter. Like if you go lift,
Oh my
I'm gonna go
gosh.
lift with you, and I'll probably lift heavier. Like that's just what. Like those are things that are probably like. But I enjoy it. I have a good time with it. But I don't live, eat, breathe, lifting weights to like. That's just not me.
So then I have a follow-up question to that, because you stay pretty swole and pretty strong throughout these years. How, from like a very nerdy technical like point of view, how are you actually maintaining muscle mass if you're not in the gym? It sounds like it's your schedule is not super consistent.
Oh yeah, not at all. I mean, so I don't know. I mean, Kaylee would classify my body as a person that can bulk very easily. So
he bulks without trying.
Yeah. So like when I'm in the weight room and I start lifting, like, okay, so I'll put it this way.
Tell him about the chiropractor lady.
Okay.
And that.
So I'm
loving this.
I got done with the world championship and my back was just hurting. And after a week or two, I was like, I need to go get a massage. So I go to get a massage. Everything's done. And then, they always give you like, hey, you should come back every other month, whatever. So she gave me that spill. And then she said, yes, I just wanted to let you know that, your chest is a little underdeveloped. I said, what? she said, yeah, I mean, compared to your back, like your chest isn't, I was like, so I'm smiling. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever. And I get out to my car and I call Kay. I'm like, babe, let me tell you what she told me because I know I'm strong. Like she doesn't tell me. And so she's like, it's okay. And she's like, what are you doing right now? I'm like, going up to 24-hour fitness. Yes, can I get a membership? And so, so I literally got a membership. And then I was like, Kaylee, I need you to write me a plan right now. So I'm in there doing flies like it's nobody's business to make sure that my chest was looking good.
This is amazing.
Led me to become a personal trainer and go from there. But yeah, I don't know. Like I enjoy it, but I'm just not one of those guys that likes to hit the weights all the time or feels the need to hit it all the time. Like if you want to meet a person like that, that's Kaylee. Kaylee is all about weights, getting under the bar.
So fun for me.
And I'm like, I mean, I'll do it.
But you'd rather be doing like back fulls and stuff for fun instead of doing that.
Yeah. I would rather be jumping. Not that she wouldn't, but yeah, I would rather be jumping. I would rather go play football, go play basketball. Like if you just get me active, I'm happy. I don't necessarily have to be in the gym lifting weights for me to feel like I got a good workout. Mm-hmm. I can go play basketball for 2 hours and feel just as happy.
We should touch on, I mean, I really do want to hear the history you guys have in terms of education, in terms of being trainers. And I know, Kaylee, you are now an educator in that which is really cool. I want to talk about that. But real quick, before we get there, let's stick with that underdeveloped muscle thing, because I think a lot of people, myself included, get a lot of aches and pains and small things that hurt. And it's not necessarily that muscle is messed up or whatever. It's that there's something surrounding it or working on the other side of it or in a different area that is causing this chain reaction of pain. And I think it's really important. But so have you guys had that happen more than just your back, Nick? Like, have you guys had that in different places through jump rope and through your years of competing?
Yeah, I mean, I can say like right now, like my left knee, it tends to get sore at times, and so I know it's not just my knee. So I'm trying to like stretch out my quads and trying to stretch out my strings, my
roll
calves.
out your IT band.
Yeah, just everything. So I know that's one thing for me.
Yeah, well, I know when I tore my first plantar fascia, I went to the physical therapist. Yeah, it was honestly though, like plantar fasciitis, which is just the pain part of it before it tears, is way worse. It's like I had that for a year and a half, and every practice was just like, it was really painful. And so when it tore in the middle of a basketball halftime, it was honestly, I know, right? Like literally right on the floor. It was fine though. But it was honestly.
But was it fine though? That sounds pretty bad.
Yeah. I didn't do the rest of the routine, which is unfortunate, but, yeah, I don't know. It was honestly a relief because it's like God's surgery, because the surgery to relieve plantar fasciitis is to cut the plantar fascia and let it heal. So it happened non-invasively, which is great. But anyway, when I went to the physical therapist and was rehabbing, he said, yeah, I'm pretty sure that one of the reasons your plantar fascia tore is because you have weak glute muscles. And I said, it was kind of like a Nick moment whenever he told his chest was weak. I was like, weak glutes? Are you kidding me? Whatever. And so, man, worked those glutes like crazy. But anyway, it just shows you your body is a chain. And when one part of that chain, particularly something as important as glutes, hip flexors, things like that, are tight, weak, messed up, etc., it's going to make other things hurt. And unless you kind of know what you're talking about, you're not necessarily going to be able to get to the root of the problem. So you gotta talk to somebody who knows.
Mm-hmm. Let's dive into the importance of biomechanics. And we'll double back to information on your education in a second. But before we get there, because my brain is I like to just go off on tangents. I think I put out a video recently about discussing the levels or the tiers of jump rope coaches, because we see so many people using that title now, not just competitive jumpers, but a lot of different people in different contexts using that term. And I'd like to get both of your opinions on the importance of actually understanding biomechanics when it comes to coaching both, I mean, really any kind of activity, but also jump rope, because I think, as you guys know, and will likely reiterate, that just because you know a jump rope skill, that's very different than being able to coach it and being able to coach it well. So I'm curious on your thoughts on where biomechanics, the importance of that, and how it fits in jump rope and in fitness in general.
Yeah, it's hugely important. I think in jump rope specifically, I think the biggest place that we see people almost dropping the ball on biomechanics and on proper coaching is in power skills. So you see, for one example, I see kids all the time who are either trying or successfully pulling a frog or a handstand snap down, for those who maybe don't know what a frog is. And they're maybe successfully pulling the rope under, but their back is so arched and they're just, they bad form that you're cringing because it's dangerous. And I think that comes from not going through the proper channels. So, kids are told sometimes by their coaches that this is the next skill that they need to work on. However, that kid can't even do a proper handstand, and so going through these steps and making sure that they can do the prerequisites. Can they hold a handstand with their head in and their back straight for, at least a few seconds before you're going to ask them to add explosiveness to that movement? We've got to go through those proper channels. And so I think that that's a huge place we see it in jump rope. Can you think of anything else?
No, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. I know whenever I get a chance to, lead workshops and work with these athletes, I try to have a whole 20 or 30-minute session on just gymnastics drills.
Yes.
And I know this was one thing that I actually got from Amy with hot dogs, especially when I was over there teaching. But we spent a lot of time on doing gymnastics drills down the floor just so you can warm it up, understand what your body's doing, and go from there. And so I try to bring in some of those drills to these workshops because, like Kaylee said, a lot of times their coaches might not know the proper form. They might not know how to coach it. So in my 20 minutes, I'm like, hey, have your head in, squeeze your stomach, think about a flat back. Just those little small things that when they leave here, they can remember those. They can be fighting for those things so that it makes their frog that much better. It'll make them less prone to injury down the road, things like that. So I think it's the understanding of your body and how you can make sure that everybody's safe when they're doing certain skills.
Yeah. And another part of this whole issue, it's kind of a generational and a cultural thing in our sport. So think about it. If a lot of our coaches actually grew up jumping now, that's happening more and more. And so if they grew up jumping and they grew up with improper form on a lot of these skills, well, they honestly probably don't know any better. And they're going to pass it down, And so that's not their fault, but it's just, we need a culture shift a little bit. And then another thing that both of us really try to emphasize with kids when we go and do these workshops with teams, we try to talk about having pride in what you do and pride in our sport. And what we mean by that to a large degree is when you look at, let's take Simone Biles, right? When you look at her, you can tell she takes pride in literally every single movement that her body makes. And there, you don't watch her and wonder if she's going to land on her feet. You don't watch her and wonder if her legs are going to be bent in the air, because you just know it's going to look perfect. And she spends time on that. And we as jump rope athletes have to have that level of pride in our sport, that when people who aren't jumpers look at our sport, they see, oh, they are athletes. Like, they do it right. I'm not worried that they're going to land on their head, because I know that they've trained, because I can see it. And so we just have to take that level of pride in our sport and not let ourselves get away with okay form. We got to strive for great form.
Yeah, I really like that. Every movement is purposeful. I like that idea of having pride in what you're doing. It's a really phenomenal way to articulate that idea. That's really cool. Let's go through the details of your guys' education with fitness. Now that we've basically discussed everything else surrounding it, let's go into what you guys have learned, where you've learned from, and kind of where you're at now.
Sure. So I think for me, fitness-wise, I'm a certified personal trainer through NASM, and then with that, I've got a few specializations. So performance enhancement specialist for like speed and agility drills, and then I've got a group personal training specialization as well. So those are the two that I have, and then you have a few as well.
Yeah, and so the only certification that I have is a certified strength and conditioning specialist through NSCA. Okay,
and then, but so with the that's actually really cool. You guys have those two different ones, because I have a NASM personal training certification, and I was looking at the strength and conditioning one as well. How do you guys, selfishly asking, how do you guys see those in relation to each other in terms of like the actual content and how it's broken down?
Oh, okay. That's a good question.
Great question. I mean, I
can skip over it if you want, but I'm just curious.
We can try.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've never actually looked at becoming a CSCS.
Yeah, I will tell you, like, the CSCS, it's a pretty difficult process. Not process. The material is not difficult in and of itself if you have a background in it, but learning all of NSCA's terminology and stuff, like, it's not an easy test. I will tell you that. It is not an easy test. Worth it, because I think a lot of people look at that certification and they know what it is, and it holds some credibility, but it's not easy for by any means. But I don't know. I've never looked at the NASM one, and I don't think you've ever looked at the NSCA one.
That's funny. So not a good question. No, I've looked at like what the way the text is broken down for the CSCS, and it seems very, very specific and very detailed in terms of all the biomechanics, energy systems, bioenergetics, and all that, which seems really cool. I like that the test is hard, because I think hard tests, the harder the test is, the more you have to really know what you're doing. Kaylee, you have done a lot of work through university as well, correct?
Yes.
Can you describe your path and your journey with that and where you are now?
Sure. So for undergrad, I did kinesiology, just kind of like a general kinesiology degree. My concentration was in fitness studies. So that just kind of, again, very general degree. And getting out of school, I always felt called to teach, honestly, but I kind of ran from that, because I was like, when I think of teaching like third grade. And I was like, I'm not designed for that. I don't think I can do it. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to stick with kinesiology. And then I got out and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, so I'm going to get a master's degree. So got my master's in exercise science and loved it. I was in Tampa with all of the bodybuilders. Every bodybuilder lives pretty much in Tampa, I learned. And so a lot of that was good for me, because I learned that in that world, like a lot of them approach their training and competition from a very scientific standpoint. And so I just learned a lot of different perspectives there from a lot of people that I would have never come into contact with. So that was cool. And my idea going through my master's degree, again, running from the whole teaching thing, was to open up my own gym. And then I interned at a place called D1. It's a national chain, but I interned at the one in Tampa and just learned that I am not cut out to run a gym by myself. Like it's not for me. And what
was it about it that you didn't think would work for you?
The business side of it scared me because I saw like how difficult it was, even for a gym that is that well established. I saw the stress level and how difficult it was for them to like keep clients constantly coming in the door, and just the fluctuations in income, or not income, but revenue for the gym. It really stressed me out. So now, ironically, Nick and I own a business, but I'm doing it with him. So I think that makes it a lot better.
I think that that's something a lot, because I've known a few people throughout my life who were trainers and went from trainer and turned into, gym owner, basically small gym owners and stuff. And I think, and you see it a lot, I think, as well in the CrossFit world with people opening up boxes and stuff. And like, I think that it's really cool to hear that you dug into that side of it and saw what it meant to have a gym, because I think a lot of people don't understand that there's like a whole business side behind it, and how complicated that gets.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I have so much respect for gym owners, because you don't think about like the liability that you have to, the insurance, the equipment costs. Like, I mean, it's just crazy the amount of overhead that goes into a really good and well-run gym. But yeah, for sure. So after I realized that that was not the path, right? Then I kind of freaked out, and I was like, okay, gosh, now what do I? So I was like, all right, back to teaching, back to what I felt called to do in the very first place. And so I was like, well, how can I teach, but not do, elementary, middle school? Because again, that's amazing, but just not for me. And so I was like, all right, well, it's university like that. I love working with college students. And so I'm going to get a PhD so I can teach at a university. And so that's what I did. And the Lord led me to Knoxville, Tennessee, to work under Jeffrey Fairbrother, who is pretty well established in the motor learning, motor control type of research and in that world. And so I learned so much from him about not only the research side of it, but really how it applies to sport. And so that just fed my love for it and fed my love for applying science and scientific principles to jump rope. And then at my program, they also, my program's kind of a dual in motor learning and sports psychology, which again, just as a competitor, I mean, sports psychology is extremely interesting. And so being able to mesh those worlds it's been so cool. That is,
oh my gosh, that's so awesome. I'm really excited for you. I'm really excited to see everything that you, I mean, you're going to obviously do an incredible amount with that. I love how you mentioned earlier that you guys were training as athletes, or we're discussing the idea of training as an athlete rather than, just doing jump rope skills. And it makes me really wonder what would happen to the sport, or what will happen to the sport when a majority of people do start to train like athletes. And I know I spoke with Stuart on a previous podcast, and he had so many good things to say about both of you and what happened when he actually did switch over to doing, weightlifting and really having a program, and how that it made a huge impact. So, man, that is so cool that you guys are, it's really fun to sit and talk with jumpers that have such a thorough background, because I think that when I was originally learning jump rope, I mean, there wasn't really much in the way of online teaching information, right? Like, I haven't gone to nearly as many places as either of you have. Even if we took the same period of time of jump rope, like 10 years and compared that, like, it's been significantly less. But when I was looking through different videos and watching people like Nick or like Shane or other jumpers, I would take their videos and literally go frame by frame by frame to see what the limbs were doing at certain points of a skill, and trying to assess like, okay, like what is actually happening. And now that I'm on the other end of that, like actually going through, education and taking time to understand that there's more happening than just the jump rope skills. It's interesting to realize like, oh, I was really tuning into this idea of biomechanics. So speaking with you guys and hearing about, your focus on that is really cool. Kaylee, earlier you mentioned that early specialization in sport kind of bugs you. Why is that?
For a lot of reasons, honestly, but I think just to hit on some high points, when a kid is for lack of a better word, kind of forced to specialize early because we, in America particularly, well, actually maybe not in America particularly, but in organized sport, it's getting so competitive at such an early age that I think a lot of kids are kind of fed this mindset that if I don't specialize and spend all of my time in this one sport, I'm going to get behind, right? Like all my friends are moving ahead in this one sport. I'm trying to play 3 and I'm getting behind. And so parents, coaches, et cetera, will try to make this kid like specialize in baseball because they have the natural ability and they could be great one day. Well, the problem with that, from a motivational standpoint, kids are getting burnt out really early. And that, that's not good from a biomechanical and just like a physical standpoint. That's one of the factors that's involved, I think, with these imbalances that we're seeing in kids, because as they're growing and developing, and they should have this really well-rounded, just diverse pool of motor skills that they're learning and muscles that they're developing to move in all of these different planes and ways to move. They're not getting that full background, right? And so we're seeing overuse injuries really early. We're seeing imbalances in musculature and all of that. For one example, in jump rope, I specialized really early, and I honestly didn't have that many injuries. But as I started training in the weight room, I noticed that my pushing strength was really good, right? But my pulling strength was not good. And I think that has a lot to do with jump rope because we do a lot of pushing off the ground and not a whole lot of pulling, right?
Yeah.
And so just, kind of a small example, but yeah, for those 2 reasons, just the diversity of physical development, motor development, and motor skill learning, and then also the burning out, I don't love the early specialization.
And does this play into why you find sports psychology interesting? I would imagine there's an element of that in there in terms of how you're motivating the kids that you spoke about. Mm-hmm. Is that why sports psychology is interesting, or are there other elements too of why you enjoy that subject?
Oh gosh, there's so many, but yeah, that's one for sure. Just, I think from a motivational standpoint, I actually have it's not a book. It's more like a packet, or anyway, it's like a coaching manual kind of mm-hmm. that I'm working on. And it's on specifically for jump rope coaches. How do you properly and in a very sustainable and effective way, how do you motivate your athletes?
I'm sorry, just to pause. This is a motivation thing for jump rope specifically that you created?
Yes. Yeah. So I worked on it during my PhD program, took a big old pause because of like dissertation and, all that fun stuff. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's pretty much done. I just have to make sure that it's ready for people to read, you know what I mean?
That is so cool.
Thank you. Yeah, I've gotta finish it because it's been several years in the making, but yeah, so it's talking to jump rope coaches specifically, and it goes into things like, how do you motivate a kid in the moment without compromising their motivation in the long run? Mm-hmm. And how do you, incorporate some of these life skills to help your athletes become well-rounded individuals? So from a motivational standpoint, that's really what intrigues me, is just this sustainability. And then sports psych also really intrigues me just because as a competitor, I'm a thinker. Like I am not a person that just goes out there and just does something. Mm-hmm. I have always thought it through, sometimes to my detriment, most of the time to my detriment. And so as a competitor, I've just noticed throughout the years that if my mental game, like if I'm not there mentally, it does not matter what my body is like. Like it does not matter if I am completely ready physically. If I'm not ready mentally, I will not perform well, period. So it's just really interesting to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of, man, that whole subject I would imagine could be several podcasts. Let's actually real quick double back to, I want to know what it means to be a world athlete. But before we get to that, what jump rope teams have you guys been on?
So at least for me, I started off on Razzmatazz. I was from Houston, Texas. And then really the only other team was Hot Dog USA because mm-hmm. I ended up coaching them and also jumping for them for 5 years. Mm-hmm. And I mean, there was a stint where we had a name called Razzmadogs.
Razzmadogs? That's so cool.
That was for the 2006 FESAC championship. And it was me and Jeff. And then we had CJ Prater from ZZ Skippers. And then we also had Joe and Ted from the Bouncing Bulldogs.
Wow.
And they're like, what's his name? We're like, Razmadogs. And, yeah.
That's a pretty stacked team. That must have
Yeah.
been fun.
Oh, it was awesome. It was awesome. So that was my team history.
Yeah. And then I started out on Heart and Soul in Baton Rouge, Louisiana with Coach Sonny Seal. And then my mom took over. And then, I think that's actually, it's just been Heart and Soul. Now, for the 2008 World Championships, since you were a Razmadog, I got to tell them what I was. It's kind of embarrassing. But we were named Team Hubcap. And
Team Hubcap.
Hubcap. Yep. It's just not even as cool as Razmadogs. But it was myself, Blake Denley, a girl named Sarah from Texas who no longer jumps, Steven Simpson, and Kirby Davis. I think that's the 5 of us. Yep.
That's cool. So I do actually, now that you said it was kind of a funny name. I have a story that I just remembered that I'm probably obligated to share with you guys because my father listens to this. He'll be really mad I didn't bring it up. At 2010 Nationals, and this kind of goes back to where we started the podcast in reference to the esteem and the respect that you guys command in the jump rope world, or have earned in the jump rope world. When we were at the 2010 National, I think it was Galveston, Texas. This was like my first Nationals ever. And we finished for the day or something. I literally saw Nick walking, I don't know, you were just walking down the hall or something, you know? And my dad's like, "Oh, dude, look, it's Nick. We should go talk to him." And you were such a star to me that I literally would not go up and say hi. Like that is like, you were so cool. I was like, that's Nick. Like I can't go talk to him. He's like the man. So like, yeah, just to add on to the funny story. Nick, I have a question for you in terms of the star power that you have. What was it like to be on the Jump documentary?
That was a lot of fun. So when that actually first came about, we didn't know who this lady was. Her name was Helen Hood Shear. And she approached us. We were in, I feel like California, maybe LA for some show. And she was like, "I heard about jump rope." I think she had contacted USA Jump Rope and was like, "I really want to follow you." It was me, Jeff, and Katrina at the time. And she's like, "I really want to follow y'all and, just see your story." And we were like, "Okay, sure, whatever." But we didn't think anything was actually going to come from it. We're like, she's going to tell us this now. We're going to go back to Houston and we're never going to.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that was not the case at all. Because she was like, "Yeah, so I'm coming down to Houston and I'll be there for a week." We're like, "To do what?" "To film you." We're like, "Oh." And so she did an amazing job. Like, she followed me, our team, and a couple of others. And I was just amazed at all the detail that she got in those shots. I mean, she literally followed the timeline from us practicing to going to regionals to going to nationals, and then she even caught worlds and like us winning. Like, it was the story over that 2-year period. It all worked out perfect. Yeah. And I couldn't have asked for a better person to tell that story. I think she did a great job with it. And just sharing those moments with my team. And, even with when we had the premiere of it, I believe it was in 2007, with Shane and Kelsey and Lee, like being able to share that moment with all of them. It was so cool just to see how it all came together and just be a part of that, and then get a chance to travel to so many film festivals over that, like maybe 4 to 6 month period.
Do you look back on that fondly? Like, are you really happy that that's all like on film to look back on?
I am. Like, I am very happy it's on film. It's just cool to kind of see where we were at that moment in time, and just kind of see how things were evolving, what we were thinking. And yeah, it was just awesome to see. I probably haven't seen that documentary in maybe 4 years now, but every time I watch it, it just makes me smile, makes me happy, because it's just an awesome representation of what our sport is.
Mm-hmm. That is, yeah, that was one of the most exciting movies or documentaries I think I watched, because I was like, oh my gosh, like jump rope's such a big thing. Like, there's even a documentary on it. This is so cool, because that was like around when I was starting, and then come to find out, like, it was just really good timing. It's not necessarily a massive thing, but yeah. Let's transition over to what it means to be a world champion, because you both have a lot of experience with that, and I'm really curious I talked with Seth Ingram about this a little bit, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on not only what does it mean to be, an elite athlete, but what does it actually take to get to that world champion status?
Goodness.
Yeah.
That's a pretty loaded question, I know, but I'm down to really go any tangent here.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll start. It takes a lot, obviously. I think that maybe a lot of people think that in jump rope, becoming a world champion is not as difficult because it's a smaller sport. But I would say that is absolutely the opposite of the case. I mean, it takes this, you hear it all the time, but it really does take thousands and thousands of hours of work and of deliberate work, right? Like, it's not just going into the gym, seeing what happens that day, like kind of playing around with it. It's no, like you're thinking about jump rope all the time. You are going into the gym with a plan and you're executing that plan. And it's deliberate work that goes into it. And then as far as just like the teamwork aspect of our sport, it takes being willing to meet with your team outside of team practices, right? Because a lot of our teams, that at least that we grew up on, the team would practice a couple of times a week. But if you want to actually be an elite athlete or a world champion, you can't just go to team practices and call it a day the way that our runs right now, right? Like, you've got to find that group or do it by yourself if you want to go for individual events, right? But you've got to find that group that's willing to go the extra mile to meet with you outside of regular team practices and make it almost like a job, right? And I think that growing up, that's kind of how I thought about it. I would go to the gym almost every day, I guess, by myself or with a small group of my teammates who are also equally committed, and just it becomes a job, but it's a fun job, right? And it's what you love and it's what you think about all the time, and you discipline your life and you discipline your body to be able to handle the training that it takes, and you just do whatever it takes.
Yeah, I mean, I think she hit all of it right there. It's just really taking ownership over it. We talk to a lot of teams nowadays about just going the extra mile. You can't just do it at practice. You have to do it outside of practice. And you see that with all the other sports, football, basketball. I had an instance with when I was coaching Hot Dog USA, and because, they were missing on, in my opinion, easy things. And like, they didn't really care about it. And so I stopped the whole team. I said, why don't you care about the sport that you put in so much effort into day in and day out? Like, you don't care about it. But I'm pretty sure if you go play basketball, you're going to do 1,000 free throws to make sure that you never miss that.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you won't put in that time here. Don't do that to this sport. If that's not what you want to do, then maybe you don't need to compete right now. And that's okay. Like, I'm not saying that you have to compete. There are other avenues. But if you want to compete, you need to give it everything you have.
Yeah.
And like, that was always the mentality that we grew up with. We always wanted to be the best. We always, practice, 3 or 4 hours a day, maybe 2 days, whatever that was. But we put in that work, and we're trying to make sure that we give that same effort or same advice to the younger generation to say, you don't just go out there and throw things. You put the effort in, you take pride in what you do, you take ownership of your skills and your routines, and then that's how you become a champion. It might start at a regional level first, then you keep working, then you become a national champion. You keep working, you become a world champion. But that work ethic follows you every step of the way.
Yep.
That is, yeah. As you were saying that, I was like, man, I'm glad I wasn't there to hear that speech in the gym. No, I'm just kidding. It's such a. I've been around jumpers in my early days who didn't really connect what it meant to earn Grand Nationals or to earn a world title, because there was for some reason some disconnect of like how much work you had to put in order to achieve a result. It was very unfamiliar, and you're so right that like if you're going to compete, why would you not put everything in it when you're there?
Right.
What are you going to do? Just think that you're going to like hope that you're going to make it? No, you got to train. I really like what you guys said about it being a job, because my friend Shari Hawkins, who's a professional heptathlete, it literally is her job to train. And I've worked with her a lot, and it's been really cool to see how throughout her day, the whole day is structured for different types of training sessions, not just, on the track or doing specific events, but what's she doing for, rehab stuff, or for mobility, or for, cryotherapy, whatever different things she's doing, you know, she's always got something lined up the entire day to get better and to achieve more. What do you guys think? Because with people like you two, I would imagine that there are others similar to your mindset in the sport, but with people like you two at the forefront of not only being some of the best in the world, but also putting out this knowledge and leading the thoughts and the actions to take in terms of programming and in terms of how to approach being an actual athlete. What do you guys think is where do you think we're going with competitive jump rope? Should we continue to adopt this approach? Because I think in the past several years, we've seen some extraordinary speed numbers come about. But I'm actually not familiar with the training that is happening to achieve those. But I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on where we will go as we continue to adopt more and more sophisticated training methods, AKA being a standard athlete of a sport, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think our sport's going to grow like crazy, in my opinion, as far as the ability levels. You touched on it already with the speed. Like, we're already seeing speed scores like go through the roof right now as far as, you know, these people training for it. And I think, you know, when you look at some of the younger generations, when it comes to power skills and multiples, like, they're taking more ownership of what it means to, you know, put the effort into these skills, and they're making it their own, and they're doing even more. And so I think that, as you know, with the biomechanics, understanding your body, the training, all that stuff, if you really start to put that stuff together, our sport should elevate more and more and more as new generations start taking over. And that's what we want to see. Like, don't get me wrong, we love being, you know, still at the top and being able to compete for championships, but like, we love seeing these 17, 18.
Right. Like when we walk into a competition and we're like, oh, shoot, even if I hit perfectly, like, there's no way I can win because of these younger kids. Like, that's awesome. Yeah, it's actually not awesome sometimes, but then it's awesome.
Yeah. So, like, we love seeing that, and we believe, like, that's where our sport's going to continue to go as long as people want to put in that effort. They want to actually get better in that way by not just jumping, but putting in the extra work, either training or lifting weights, whatever that is. Just putting in that extra effort is going to push us forward. Anything else?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think what we're seeing right now with speed scores in particular, I'm not aware of exactly what some of these teams that you see really crushing it, especially teams in Asia right now that are just annihilating scores. I'm not aware of exactly what training methods they're using. Whatever they're doing, it's working. But I will say, because we're seeing such a steep growth, it tells me that we're not at the peak of like human capacity yet. Mm-hmm. Like, we're not, I don't even think we're that close to it when you really start looking at numbers. And so I think, especially in 3-minute speed, like, we're going to keep seeing these huge increases. And I also think it's very interesting from a psychological standpoint. Like, if you look at the 5-minute mile thing, right? Like, if you've heard that story. Yeah. And you know what I'm talking about. One person beat that. And then the next year it was like, oh, so many people understood now that it's possible. And so more people started to do it. And so I think that's going to happen with speed. It already has started. And it's also cool that that's going to happen in freestyle. So if you take people like, for example, like Seth and Porter right now, they are pushing the boundaries like crazy. And they're also, again, it comes back to that leadership thing, whether you like it or not, you're a leader and a role model. Because they're elevating things so much and people like them are elevating it, whether they like it or not, they are a leader in the sport right now. And so other people are going to see, this is possible, I can do that too. And then they're going to take it and put their own spin. And that's how we continue to elevate our sport as a community. And it's just so dang cool.
Yeah. And going back to, like, you know, seeing what's possible. I mean, there was a time for 6, maybe 8 years where I was the only person that could do the moneymaker.
Yeah.
Like, it was. That was it. Who could do the moneymaker? It was Nick. That was it. And
I don't think anybody really ever trained it because it was just like
no, because it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Believe me, right? And so then, like, you know, Hamisi did it, and then, you know,
Zach did it.
Then Zach did it. Then Josh. So then, like, you probably have 12 to 20 people now who can do it, and they do it during a competition. I'm like,
yeah,
well,
that's ridiculous.
I don't even like to do that.
But yeah, and that's a good point too. Like, Nick would never say that, but he was one of those people, right, that elevated the sport and that
Yep.
set that precedent, you know? And so
Yep.
I think you were the first one to do a full too with the rope.
Yep.
So after he did a full with the rope, now all of a sudden other people not only get the idea, but they see, oh, it's possible, you know, and people who took pride in their technique first. So like I think of Shane Windsor, right?
Mm-hmm.
A frog versus another person doing a frog. Shane's frog would win every single time, right? And it shows people what's possible and it inspires them to want to do that plus more.
Yeah, Shane's frog was the frog that I would always watch. Like that was my goal, was to have a frog like his, because it was so crisp and so clean. I think there's just so much good stuff in this. We could go for probably days. But before we kind of get to wrapping up here, I definitely have to ask you both. You guys are married now, and it is through jump rope, correct?
Yes, it is.
Yep.
Can we have the story about that?
Of course you can.
Nick's better at telling it.
I love telling it. So we started dating trying to talk in 2012. So
he really started trying to talk in 2012.
Yeah, I really started. Yeah. So we got done with Worlds, and we were having our camp in Seattle, Washington, and Kaylee was coming up to help be a part of that and help me run it. So as she was coming up there, Amy, my program director, she said, Nick, go pick up Kaylee, and there's going to be some other people coming a couple hours later. Take her out to eat really quick, like just, spend some time.
Occupy her.
Yeah, occupy her. I was like, whatever. So I go and pick her up, and it's Kaylee. Like, she's a beautiful woman. Like, and I know everything jump rope about her. Like, but that's as far as it went.
And meanwhile, just a caveat here, on the plane, when I got the text that Nick was going to be picking me up and taking me out to eat, my immediate thought was like, oh, dang it, this is going to be awkward, because like we're kind of friends, but not really. And there's nothing to talk about.
Yeah,
so
I gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. So I pick her up, we go out to eat, and we start talking on literally everything except for jump rope, which was awesome. Yeah. And so that's kind of, for me at that moment, like it started to say like, oh, there's, not that I didn't know that there was more to her, but I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like, we can just talk about anything. And so that started me like flirting with her the entire camp. Like, it didn't matter.
And I was like, what is he doing, man? Like, why is he buying me ice cream?
I was running the camp, so I could be wherever I wanted. I was like, yeah, y'all go do this. Hey, can you do something? I was that person. She was just trying to make sure she got everything. And then one of my classic lines to her, we were doing a show, and there was like a little festival outside. So it's like they had ice cream. So I went and got her some ice cream. I got some ice cream. And that song, Call Me Maybe, was out by whatever her name was. And so like I come up to her, I give her some ice cream. I'm like, call me maybe. It was awesome. It was
not awesome. I was like, what in the world?
It was the best line I could have ever done. And so basically and that was the year we were about to go to the Olympics. I had actually just tore my Achilles as well. So I was unable to perform, but I still went on the trip. And before I went, I was leaving the camp, and I told her, I said, Kaylee, I need you to update your phone so that we can talk through iMessage, because it just came out. I was like, I want to talk to you while we're there. She's like, why? I'm like, just update your phone. Stop asking questions. And so, so we started talking throughout my whole trip there. And then when I got back, I went to go visit her and her family, hung out for a weekend, which was awesome. And so in my head, we were like, not a thing, but like we were talking for a little bit. So we got to like December, and she's like, nah, I'm not ready for this. I'm like, you're not ready for what? Like, this is great.
Now, mind you, he's in Seattle and I'm in Louisiana. So like,
Nick's like, listen, I can do the moneymaker. I don't know what else we need to talk about here.
I'm like, what else do you need?
Right.
So we stopped talking in like December, and then from like January up until like...
This is a good story. I thought this was just going to be like a linear straight shot, but I love that there's like a good amount of drama happening.
I got stories for days. So then from January up until the next camp.
June,
to next June and July.
I was sad the whole time.
Yeah, she was sad.
I'm the one that broke it off, but I was still real sad.
Yeah, and I was like, I guess we're not dating. So I actually ended up dating somebody else.
The nerve.
Yeah.
Nice. You had to make her jealous. That's what's up. That's a good play.
Yeah. No, I did it other people too, though, but they were all horrible. But he actually found like a decent person. So I was like, dang it.
Yeah. So I started dating somebody, and so she comes back the next year to the camp in July, and so she's like, have a small talk. Oh, how you doing? I'm like, oh, no, I'm good. She's like, are you dating somebody? I'm like, yeah. She's like, wait, what?
I go and I find Brian's shoe and I just cry. I was like, Brian, how could you let this happen?
That's funny.
Yeah, so we finished out the camp. She was very upset. I didn't really talk to her a whole bunch because I didn't want to make anything awkward. But
no, you were walking around. You're like, yeah, see, that's what happens. Like, you should have kept talking to me. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I'm a great guy.
You lost this. But yeah, so we ended up stopped talking. Me and that girl stopped talking. And then back in October of 13, we went to a workshop that we were both at. And she found out that I stopped talking to the girl. And we just kind of said, let's just start to talk again. And let's just see where it goes. So we started talking for a year. And we actually didn't let anybody know for almost a whole year.
Yeah.
So we started talking, and I would go visit, she would come visit, but we just didn't really let anybody really know, because we if we were going to do it, we wanted to make sure it was real, and we weren't going to be just.
We didn't want it to be like a Facebook phenomenon, and then it lasts 6 months. You know what I mean? Like all the little kids are sad. We didn't want any of that.
Yeah. Well, because you guys are literally celebrities in the jump rope world, so that was a whole celebrity thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and so then we finally put it out there. I guess the summer of 14, and then at this point I was in Seattle. She was doing her master's in Tampa. So talk about long distance. That's where we were. And then 2016, or really at the end of 2015, when she told me that she wanted to start her PhD program in Knoxville. Then, I made the decision to, follow her there. So we both migrated to Knoxville, Tennessee. And then about a year after we got there, I proposed. I proposed back in Baton Rouge.
New Orleans.
In New Orleans. I flew into Baton Rouge. But yeah, back into New Orleans, where she wanted me to kiss her when we first went out.
Yeah, I took him, we were on a date. I took him to the water and I told him, I said, word for word, this is my favorite spot in the city. It's so beautiful. Da, 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 da. If a girl ever says that to you, you probably should kiss her or at least hold her hand.
Yeah. I didn't. It was Kaylee, so I got nervous, so I didn't do anything. And so when I got to the point of proposing, I had it all worked out for her to go back to that spot. And so she was out there not knowing what was happening. I ended up coming behind her, surprising her.
You should tell him about the day really quick.
Oh, gosh. Okay. So,
I made him really mad.
Oh, my gosh. This is great.
So I get there and I say, okay, Miss Ann, I need you.
That's my mom.
That's her mom. I said, I need you to get Kaylee to New Orleans, and, we need to get there by 2:00 so I can propose. And she's like, okay, Nick, don't worry. And we're leaving up this a week or two before. It's like, don't worry, I'll do it. So I get off the plane and I'm like, hey, I got my rental car. I'm heading over there. How are y'all doing? She's like, Nick, she's practicing her routine right now. I'm like, oh, okay.
The downside of dating a world champion.
And I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. I said, are y'all going to be done anytime soon? She was like, Nick, I don't know, because if I tell her to leave now, she's going to know something. Yeah. And so I kind of have to let her go through this. I'm like, well, do you think it's going to be long? She's like, probably not, 20 minutes. 3 hours later.
Oh my gosh.
I was stuck on a part.
Yeah. And mind you, she's an hour away from where we need to be. So I'm like, Miss Ann, can you just get her here? So she finally gets her there. I go ahead and propose. So she cries, which is awesome. And then our first date was actually at a place called Bubba Gump's. And so I had arranged all of her close friends and my family to meet us at Bubba Gump's. So she didn't even know about that. So I proposed. She was happy. I was like, let's just go out to eat. So then she's like, okay. So let's go to Bubba Gump's right across the street. So we go over there. We have a whole room in the back. We surprise her again. Tears again. Points for Nick. It's awesome.
I love the way you're telling this. This is awesome.
Oh yeah. I'm all about the points. And then from there, we got married December of 2018. Yeah. So we're working on 2 years now. It's been awesome. I wouldn't have changed any part of the story that I told you for what we have now.
Was that a high five in the background? Is that what happened?
Oh no, that was just me clapping.
It sounded like a high five. Yeah, we're doing great. Bam.
But yeah, no, it's been awesome. I couldn't have asked for a better partner in life when it comes to work, spiritual, like everything. I couldn't have asked for anything better. Like having somebody that has pushed me in ways that I wouldn't have been pushed before. Having somebody who understands jump rope, I would have never had before. Having somebody who said, don't worry about the traditional 9 to 5. You should stop everything you're doing at 32 and just start your own and just do business. Yeah, I can support you with that. I'm like, are you serious? Like, you don't find that. And I found it. So it's awesome.
Wow, that is, it's so cool to hear how great the relationship is, but also that it's come through jump rope, and it speaks volumes about, I guess, jump rope, but also just the idea of being really in a sport, you know. I think now would be probably a good time to wrap up. I mean, that was an incredible story. That was really fun. What I think that we've already touched on, especially with that, a lot of things that will factor into your answer. But for both of you, I'm curious, what is jump rope to you?
Ooh, that's a great question.
That is a great question. What is jump rope to me? I mean, I think, and I'll probably go on tangents here, but I think jump rope is very special to me because it just gave me the opportunity to just express myself, be creative, be unique, and just find a new niche. I think that's the biggest thing that I think it's kind of helped me find. And like, once I found that and I saw all the avenues that jump rope can open up, not just traveling, but the leadership, all that stuff, I want to now provide that for as many people as I can for as long as I can. That doesn't mean that I have to be in front of you doing the show and impressing you. If it's through videos, if it's through documents, if it's through programs, jump rope to me is being able to share what I got and being able to transfer it to other people so that they can have that same joy, that same love, that same feel that I've had for the past 26, going on 27 years. I want to give that to as many people as I can for as long as I can.
Isn't he awesome? Yeah, I mean, I think jump rope is a lot of those same things to me. It's been something that I've been blessed with, and that it's just taught me the power of giving back, seeing this sport and this community, and just being so humbled by how much people have poured into me through it, and how much people have believed in me, believed in Nick and I, like as a couple through our jump rope family, being so humbled by that, and then just having just this desire to like love on people with the gift of jump rope and through the sport. Like it's just such a special community, but it's also a really special tool that we have, right? Because it's such a unique talent, if you will, that number one, it's a conversation starter. And then number two, it just allows us to serve people, and it allows us to, hang out with kids and connect with them in a way that we probably couldn't if we didn't have something that was so unique. And so that's an amazing thing that jump rope is to me. And it's also just a tool that I really do feel like God's used it in my life to just teach me so many things about work ethic, right? About not being prideful and not being, complacent or comfortable with what you have right now, but always striving to be better and to do more with what you're given. And so, yeah, all around, I think jump rope is a tool that has refined me and shaped me, or helped to shape me into who I am, and just given me this community and inspired me to love and serve. Wow.
That is such a powerful 2 answers. That's so much to like digest. And this has been, oh my gosh, from start to finish has been such a really fun chat, not only in the stories you guys have shared, but just kind of, I've known of you guys, and I haven't really had an in-depth conversation that much with either of you. So it's been really cool to really dig in and really get to know more about both of you as people and as jumpers. This has been really phenomenal, you guys. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah. Thanks for having us. Yeah. This is great.
This has been awesome. We really appreciate you. We really appreciate all the work that you're doing through this podcast, through your social media. Like, we see all the things that you're doing, and you're doing an awesome job. So keep up the great work.
Thank you. That does mean a lot. I really appreciate that, guys. All right, we'll definitely let you get back to your day, and thank you again for being on.
Anytime.
Thanks,
See
Nate.
you later.
See ya.
Hey, before you go, I just wanted to say one last thing. One of my main goals for this podcast is to share the stories, of other jumpers and provide a full picture about everything that's possible with the jump rope. The more people that hear this, the better. And it would really help me out if you sent this podcast to somebody you know, whether in real life or digitally on Instagram, Facebook, whatever platform you use. It would mean the world to me. So that's it. I hope you have a great rest of your day, night, lunch, evening, whatever time it is for you right now. See you later.